I am fundamentally, to be honest, politically conservative. I support traditional constitutional systems in our country. I think that a free market economy is the best vehicle to drive the economy and jobs. And I hate political philosophies which lean on an abundance of welfare and too much government control. So it pains me to say this, but I think the ALP is odds on to win this year's election. And if you have a look at some of the punters today and what they have done, they have taken the ALP's price today on some of those websites down to $1.35. And the coalition looks set to be beaten. Now, this is very early to call, I know, and a week is a long time in politics. All that is true. But the electorate is finding it difficult to listen to the government. And this week nailed it all together for me. The trust has been lost. The news poll result earlier in the week showed that we've obviously been speaking about a lack of trust for Scott Morrison and his government around the Christmas dinner table. The government is clearly on the nose. Their handling of the pandemic has been hampered by their frequent inability to forward plan. Not all their fault, but gee, we've seen some own goals. Last week's flim-flam statement by the PM about Mark McGowan's border policy was just weak and self-serving.
Well, I'm saying that's the Premier's call. That's what I'm saying. And he has to make that decision based on what he thinks his health system is ready to absorb. But at the end of the day, Mark McGowan's got to make that call, and we've been supporting it. That
came after more than a year attacking the WA government over its pathetically risk-averse border closure policy. The coalition has obviously read the latest polling and have seen that West Australians have taken the federal government's criticism of McGowan's border closures personally. The majority support being blocked off from the world. Some even support an eternal blockade in WA. Now, that's viewed by many of us in the East as extremely insular and backward, but it's real. And with those 10 coalition seats in WA looking very wobbly, Morrison and co did an about-face and sold out to the polling. Well, at least we now know that the federal government's philosophy about opening up, about living with the virus, is negotiable depending on votes. And I'm sorry, that is wrong and it is weak. And that's what Malcolm Turnbull tried to do throughout his term as Prime Minister, changed what he firmly believed in a failed attempt to keep popular and successful. And that turns off core Liberal Party supporters. Just like many of them hate the government's weakness on net zero, they may have gotten over that, but what he said about WA during the week, I think, drew a lot of them away from support. Now, on top of that, we've had the Gladys Berejiklian's text messages about Morrison being horrible, horrible person, and she didn't trust him.
I've been provided with a text message exchange between the former New South Wales Premier and a current Liberal Cabinet Minister. I've got them right here. In one, she describes you as, quote, a horrible, horrible person, going on to say she did not trust you and you're more concerned with politics than people. The minister is even more scathing, describing you as a fraud and, quote, a complete psycho. Does this exchange surprise you? And what do you think it tells us?
Well, I don't know who you're referring to or the basis of what you've put to me, but I obviously don't agree with it. And I don't think that's my record.
That National Press Club appearance, it was certainly a Canberra media bubble pylon. We get all that. But it did the PM's reputation no favours at all. It may also explain why Berejiklian was on her own path so often during the pandemic. She had obvious little faith in the federal government. And this unnamed federal Liberal Cabinet Minister, whose text reveals that he or she thought the PM was a fraud and a complete psycho, added to this Labor Party narrative that Morrison is a fake and can't be trusted. The mere fact that someone so senior would pass that message on for public release tells me that internally, some in the party believe their time in government is up. Then Barnaby Joyce's personality assessment of the PM via text again, it dropped soon after. He called Morrison a hypocrite and a liar. You can't make this stuff up. What a week. Now, he'd originally sent it to a Morrison hater, someone connected to Brittany Higgins, when he was still on the backbench. But it's as stupid as you could get. It is another example of Barnaby's impetuous behaviour at times. He can fire off a commentary and then think about the ramifications later on. Yesterday's apology, though, I've got to say, was cringeworthy.
I should never have written the text, so the fault is mine. I never expected the text to be forwarded on. I certainly never expected to be in the public realm. But none of that would ever have happened had I not read it.
And on top of all of this self-destruction, and it is self-destruction, there's been a deadly second wave of deaths occurring in aged care, which is overseen by the Federal Minister, Richard Colbeck. Now, you could not find a more incompetent man. In the midst of this crisis, he not only attends the cricket in Hobart for 3 days, he later tries to defend that decision. What a dope.
All through that weekend, I continued to work on matters relating to both of my portfolios, but particularly aged care, even though it was a weekend and also I was attending the test match. So it was a decision that I made. I have to stand by it and live with it.
So did he work between overs, or did he work during the luncheon and tea interval? I don't know. The Prime Minister needs to have the guts to sack this bloke. Where is Scott Morrison's intestinal fortitude? Where has it been in National Cabinet when all of those Labor leaders simply walked all over him? His government can't possibly survive this kind of week again. The government is crippled in so many ways. The coalition is about to get onto the opposition benches as far as I'm concerned. Now, to think that Chris Bowen, Bill Shorten, Penny Wong, Christina Keneally and Jim Chalmers will run the joint is an extremely frightening prospect. The way both major parties are scoring on the primary vote at the moment tells me that there'll be a minority government and little Adam Bandt could become the puppet master. Can you imagine how fast this joint will be damaged? But the Prime Minister himself has created this monster, and until he can set out a better plan than what we've heard, stamp out all of those own goals from his dumbos, including Colbeck, and start being genuine with Australians, I'm telling you, there will be no fourth term.